Okay, now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why does he have to review something like this? This is just more of that moe pandering crap that's been filling the market for the past, 6 years? Why don't you review something awesome? Guess what? I am. At least, I think so. My opinion has to count for something, right? Maybe. I don't know. So, time for a history lesson. In anime, moe is, well, almost its own genre, and started to explode in popularity with the introduction of shows like Lucky Star and K-On!, shows that revolve around early adolescent high school girls who go about living their lives in rather relaxed and adorable ways. Considering the massive popularity of these shows, it was only a matter of time before other animation studios wanted to cash in on this new craze, which led to quite a bit of the exact same thing coming out over a short period of time. Each new moe show was somewhat interesting and charming in their own right, but when viewed side by side with one another, they become increasingly repetitive. So what then? How does it evolve? Well, it needs to keep the same core aspects that all of these other shows have, but give it a unique twist that differentiates itself from the rest of the crowd. Begin the advancement of moe into every genre ever. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today we are looking at a show that takes the core concepts of the slice of life moe kind of shows, but applies it to a group of characters that happen to participate in a particular after-school club. One that involves the operation of tanks. Yes, tanks. World War II type tanks. Tanks with big-ass cannons on them, because if Hellsing Ultimate taught me anything, it's that... You know, I'm not actually gonna go there. Regardless, Girls and Panzer. Let's jam. I think one of the things that I like about the setup to the show is that while the characters seem to be following the same traditional motifs as you normally see in the slice of life genre, the actual setting and story appear to be quite different, or at least different enough. It's actually a lot closer to a tournament anime rather than a high school slice of life anime. Because here, in Girls and Panzer, at the school where our story takes place, is the Sencha-do Club. Sencha-do in English roughly translates to tankery. It's where young girls learn the ability to function all aspects of a tank. And then teams from various schools learn the ways of tank combat and hold many an inter-school tank battle for glory. Of course, then the question becomes, why is it only young girls? Well, thankfully they give some sort of reasoning besides just ignoring the issue entirely. In the world of Girls and Panzer, the culture around Sencha-do is very similar to that of the Japanese tea ceremony. It is believed that those who participate and become extremely proficient at Sencha-do will eventually become ladies of elegance and fine standing. However, there's also this level of martial arts culture in there as well. For example, our main character comes from a family with their own developed way of doing Sencha-do, similar to a family-run martial arts school, but with tanks. So what's this show actually about? Well, quite simply, it takes the themes from a traditional tournament series, as I mentioned, and starts off with a ragtag band of Sencha-do club members who know very little to almost nothing at all about tanks, and through the power of hard work and friendship, learn to become masters of Sencha-do and compete in the International Sencha-do Tournament against other school ships. What's that, you ask? Did I just say ships? Yes. Yes, I did. Because our high school in question exists on the top of a retrofitted aircraft carrier. Apparently, this is a normal thing. How is this not interesting? If this doesn't interest you, I feel like saying that you're sad and I have no desire to speak with you further, but that's kind of being a little harsh. It's still really, really interesting though. Seriously, my God. Problem I have with the characters of Girls and Panzer is actually nothing to do with the main group of characters, the ones who comprise the primary badass tank group. It's the fact that the activity of Sencha-do is very much a large group sport. It's never one tank on one tank, it's entire battalions, which leaves our hero squad to be made up of several tank groups that we know more or less nothing about. It's a problem with a lot of shows that feature an incredibly large ensemble cast. They tease you enough to show the majority of the characters, at least enough so that you get interested in them, but then they are immediately shifted to the sidelines. They're just the other tanks on the side that you are cheering for. Unless you are not cheering for them, which I suppose is a thing, and I can't begrudge you for that. That is what you want to do, and that's perfectly fine, but it's kind of like going to a screening of Jaws and cheering for the shark. Now, while all of that is happening and depressing parts of my inner nerd, something else is happening. See, I like a lot of the cast of this show, but it wasn't until after the show was over that I realized a lot of the character-specific storylines don't really end all that well, if at all. One character, Hana, comes from a family of florists, and is more or less disowned by her mother because she wants to do tankery. And also our main character, Miho, almost gets similarly disowned, but mainly because her family is all about tankery, and they believe her to be complete shite at it. All of those problems just kind of get swept under the rug though. As with most tournament-style shows, the act of winning everything at the end solves all problems. Not the best thing to teach your audience, but to do otherwise would kind of ruin the happy feelings that winning gives. So why did I not notice this general sweeping under the rug the first time through? Well, you can call me inattentive, if you wish, but it's probably because I was too focused on the battles. And because the reality of the show is that the main focus is those battles. At least, I feel it is. Intricate details about the main characters are secondary behind the battles that have them work as a team to strategize against the various enemies that they face. The show has a lot of character generalizing, to be honest, as heck, all the enemy teams that they face are just built-up stereotypes of various countries. The English team drinks tea at every opportunity and is one of the few who fight fairly and with chivalry. The American team is loud, obnoxious, and cheats to win. The Russians rely heavily on the cold of winter to ruin their enemies, and the Germans focus heavily on brute force. It is these tank battles that set this show apart from everything else in the genre, and what makes the show completely enjoyable. They're just fun to watch! Even if, you know, at first glance, the tanks aren't the best animated things you've ever seen. If you're the kind of person that focuses heavily on the visuals when watching an anime, prepare to be slightly disappointed. Well, at least to a point. With the characters, everything is standard fare for this day and age, as it were. I say that, though what I really mean by saying that is that there's nothing in the animation that exceeds expectations, nothing that goes above and beyond what you would expect, but also at the same time is not at any point exceedingly horrible. Did that come out right? I hope so, because I'm moving on anyway. The sticking point with a lot of people is going to be the tanks, which are rendered entirely in CG. Not the best of CG, mind you, which is why you might be turned off at the onset. What helps a lot, however, is not how the tanks look, but instead how they move. Now, I'm not an expert on tanks, but as far as I could tell, the actual movement of the tanks was entirely realistic, which helps a ton in this whole breaking that realism barrier thing. Now, that is not to say that they were not willing to bend the rules of reality slightly. See example 22A, tank drifting. The music for the series is rather samey, but in a charming kind of way. Most of it consists of lighthearted military marches, which fit the show. The standout song, though, is actually a rendition of an old Russian war song called Katyusha, which the members of the Russian team sing as the battle begins and they ride to war. It's a brilliant rendition that truly helped to give one of these background teams some more character development besides the cookie-cutter archetypes that they all seem to be getting in relation to whatever country they are apparently from. Unless, of course, you're watching the localized version of Girls and Panzer. If you're watching it on a DVD, this is for you. Because if you are watching it in the localized fashion, this beautiful rendition of this wonderful song is replaced by Tetris. No, I am not making this up. For whatever reason, the localization team were unable to secure the rights to a 1938 Russian folk song, so they edited in Korobiniki and removed any trace of the characters actually singing, so it's just them stoically riding into the snow with Tetris music in the background for a few minutes. The world really needs to fix its laws regarding copyright protection and eventual movement into public domain, because this is ridiculous. Now, the dub is exactly what I expected, to be honest, and I might even say that it is worse than what I expected. At the bare minimum, this show is another further example that English voice actresses, either by choice or by design or what have you, cannot pull off the moe-filled voices that their characters look like. Apparently, I was spoiled when I watched Devil is a Part-Timer and then reviewed it, because that doesn't seem to be happening again. Now, as much as I would like to say that the dub is not horrible, it's definitely down there. Now, I don't know if there's anybody to put blame on, if that is indeed something that should be happening, but I don't think it's to do with the actresses, because while there are several of them that I've never heard of before, as is actually a good thing. I like that. The ones who I do know actually performed less than what I expected, so it's quite possible that this is more on the ADR side, but the thing and the feeling that I got from this dub, and actually the entire localization in general, going back to what I said about that one song that was replaced by Tetris, because my god, the one thing and feeling that I've been getting is that this would just seem to have been made for the sake of being made. Now, that is not to say that that was the thought process behind anybody making this dub or making this localization, but that is the feeling I'm getting. It just seems kind of phoned in a lot of the time. Now, at the very least, I can back off a bit, at least in regards to voice actresses not sounding as young and cutesy as the moe Japanese voices, because I've recently considered this to just be a fact of life, and that's not something that anybody can deal with. It's just everything else that I have a problem with. So I can't just lambaste the whole thing. So the dub is passable, barely. Switch to Japanese if you can. Girls in Panzer is a tournament-style show that, on the one hand, relies heavily on the miracle rookie trope, except you have to take that and you have to multiply it among all the main characters, but on the other hand, has this ability to make you really want to cheer for the underdog. Because by all accounts, our main characters should have been knocked out of this tournament basically from the get-go. But not only do they not do so, they also don't win battles by using cheap tricks or relying on immense luck by having their opponents make some serious misstep. There are tactics involved, and this group of girls are able to somehow pull it off in a somewhat believable fashion. Now, granted, the show does take a multitude of characters who have absolutely no experience in the maintenance, driving, or any operation of tanks at all, coupled with tanks themselves that they found rusted and busted in and around their rather large aircraft carrier ship. I feel like saying it's a town, but it is in fact an aircraft carrier, so that's weird. It takes those characters and those crap tanks and somehow combines them to make a winning kick-ass team. A winning kick-ass team that wins against other teams who are more experienced and have better equipment. And not only that, but they're also usually outnumbered to boot. So while there is a certain level of suspension of disbelief that you have to have, for whatever reason, the show makes it really easy to just accept it. Like, for example, on top of all that, the show seems to be using live ammunition, or at least, as far as the show explains, they're using live ammunition, and yet these girls have absolutely no problem just popping their head out of the tank while it drives around and things like that, and nobody really gets seriously injured, and the tanks never explode or anything. It just happens to be like bumper cars with pellets coming out of the cannons or something, except that when they don't hit tanks, they explode a lot. Oh, and of course, the show also wants you to believe that there are groups of girls who can spend countless hours in metal boxes, as it were, with absolutely nothing covering their legs, because all they wear are skirts, even in the freezing cold Russian-like weather. Because fan service. So again, the show does push your tolerance for suspension of disbelief. But it also does it while trying to be as historically accurate as possible. The tanks have suspension in their animation, which I thought was amazing, personally. And you know what? This entire show, I just enjoyed the hell out of it. I did. I really did. The entertainment and excitement that I got from watching these tank battles made up for basically every other shortcoming that the show has. Which of course makes me even less likely to go out and watch the show's OVA release, because that's just slice of life with absolutely no tank battle in sight. And to quote a very good friend of mine, I have not had such buyer's remorse than I did with the Girls und Panzer OVA. And I bought a PS4. As such, after carefully considering all aspects of the show and having my thoughts presided over by Japanese girls singing Russian for countless hours on end, has me awarding Girls in Panzer with a recommendation to buy it. It's one of the few gems in the genre that branches out on its own with a truly unique twist while keeping the same core themes of the moe slice of life phenomenon intact. Now, if you are less moe inclined, then feel free to skip the show altogether, but if you don't, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And at the time of this video, Girls und Panzer is available from Sentai Filmworks on DVD. Just be careful if you do plan to buy it, because the case for the main series and the case for the OVAs are extremely similar. And at this time, I don't recommend watching the OVAs unless you are really in love with the main series itself. For those with access to such services, the series is also available on Crunchyroll and Hulu for legal streaming, so you can go and do that thing. As for alternate anime recommendations, I feel the need to mention two shows that heavily feature tanks. On the one side, I heavily recommend Sound of the Sky, which is focused a lot more on the slice of life with less actual tank battles, but is still heavily military themed. But I would also recommend Valkyria Chronicles, which, as you might have guessed, is much more battle focused. Between the two, you should hopefully find something to your liking. And that's it from me. Please subscribe if you enjoy the video. Follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined. And hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please go check out my Patreon page. And if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to James Champion and Grace Anderson for donating already. You guys are awesome. So until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and, of course, others, stay frosty.